Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the panel about reclaiming public space, organized by Manifesta and Balkan Investigative Reporting Network, which I run in Kosovo. I have a very distinguished panel here today. I will start from the luckiest mayor in this panel. Do you agree with me that the mayor of Pristina is the luckiest? Yeah. Because 6 months after he gets to power, he gets to host Manifesta. Many people go throughout their career begging Manifesta, their career as a mayor, begging Manifesta to come to their town. They never get what you just got. Land it on your lap. Mayor of Pristina, përparim Rama. Next to përparim, Femke Halsema, the unlucky mayor who never got to host Manifesta. Because, you know, Amsterdam cannot impress Manifesta compared to Pristina. It's not up to our standard. Pristina has standards that Amsterdam hasn't yet reached. And we can teach you a thing or two how to become host, okay? I know that Manifesta is founded in your city, but it takes a bit more edge to get to host Manifesta. So I hope you'll get there next while you are mayor or you run again for mayor. Next to both of them, I'll never believe I would have said this myself, that I would have heard myself say that next to them is Leoluca Orlando, who's been mayor for 22 years. 22 years. First time he was mayor was 1995. Last time he was mayor was June 2022. He has a thing or two to teach us maybe today about reclaiming public space. So I'm very honored to have you here and very excited, but I want to share with you that instead, just not only welcoming my panel, I welcome people who have arrived in our capital city for the first time. And I want to remind you that if there was a competition, Pristina could win the ugliest capital of Europe, for sure. We certainly do we are the most polluted city, one of the most polluted in the world. We often in the winter score the same levels of pollution as New Delhi because of we heat our homes with coal. But in order to make up for this ugliness, you are likely to have arrived to the friendliest city in Europe, because we need to make it up. So we have to compensate a little bit, because if you were, as a pedestrian, you walk in our city, you could see the chaos, you could see lack of pedestrian space, you could end up in holes, but you are guaranteed, if you end up hurt, there will be the friendliest people around to save you. So this is the experience of the city, the ugliest and friendliest. But my experience as investigative journalist covering local governance for the last 15 years has been largely to see the darker side of my state and my city. So I need to share with you that as a professional skeptic, a few months ago and then a month ago, I went in one of these spaces that artistic people from Manifesta claim they will transform, and I thought, let's let them think better, but let me record it as a journalist. Let me record these spaces. And I went to the ugliest place and most challenging place they said they would transform. I went there with 2 cameras to make sure we record this. And this was the brick factory. US tourists have not experienced the dumping ground, the very, very filthy dumping ground this place was just a few weeks before you arrived here. In the middle of the city, in 15 minutes from where we are, this place was used as a dumping ground for the rest of the city for all the nasty materials that people wouldn't put in garbage in their neighborhoods. All the big materials that people couldn't fit in their local garbage bins. Since 1999, this place had served as central Pristina dumping ground. The only people I found there tolerating that place, which was a horror space from horror films, mostly considered for normal citizens. But the only people that I found there when I went to film it were the truck drivers, because it was such a huge space that they found it central enough to park their trucks, and they were high enough to go with the big tires of the truck on top of the garbage and not to see what was underneath. So it served for the truck drivers of the city. This, I was pinching myself the other night when we were dancing in this filthy ground, which used to be a filthy ground. So I don't see a better story to start the topic of reclaiming public urban space than with a brick factory, which used to be a filthy garbage ground of my city. And in the end, Manifesta actually didn't give me a story. As a person who was looking for a story, they won't be able to do this. They actually did transform this place, and that's why I wanna thank the people who did it. The people first, curator who thought this would be a good idea, Manifesta staff, mostly Pristina municipality who implemented this artistic idea, and most of all, I want to thank the engine of this project, who chooses not a semi-filthy place to transform, not a medium filthy place, but the ugliest place in Pristina to transform, chooses that space. And that is a person you may all know a little bit. Hedvig Figen. You are the engine, and you can now, even if you decide to go home after this, you will be remembered in Pristina for cleaning our garbage ground. So, thank you for already transforming our city. Let me now turn to our topic. I will start with you, Mr. Orlando, because your city is the closest, it has the most similarities to what Pristina is now undergoing. You come from Palermo, who after the Second World War had to go through, was a city amongst others, organized crime. Then it became city of migrants, people coming into it, and you became a symbol of migrant welcoming. But in terms of public space, reclaiming public space for its citizens, as well as the people who are not from Palermo, what was the biggest challenge in your city for reclaiming a public space?
Thanks a lot. I just wish to start saying thanks to a so brilliant moderator, to Jeta Xhara, and I wish to say thanks to the Manifesta, to Hedvig Figen, giving me the opportunity to meet two important mayors of two important European cities. First of all, to meet the mayor of Pristina, that is so exciting and so rich of contradictions, and looks like Palermo. Because I think that Palermo is just an alive contradictions. And when Palermo will have no contradiction, Palermo will die. And I hope to die before seeing Palermo without contradictions. And I'm so happy just to stay together with the mayor of Amsterdam, because for us, Amsterdam is just an example about a vision of human rights. And do you know what is my job? Do you know the job of my friend and mayor of Pristina? To combine contradictions with human rights is really, really not simple. And I wish just to speak about that. Starting from this word public spaces, I disagree. Because I think that public space belongs to the past. Today, I was in the red corridor, and the red-green corridor, the green corridor, did not appear to me a public space. Appeared to me a common good. You know common good? Mm-hmm. It's just something ahead. Because public space is inside the difference between private and public. Common good overpass this distinction. And we in Palermo discovered the importance of the common goods, starting from the the patrimony confiscated to the mafia. Patrimony confiscated to the mafia are not public, are not private, but they are common goods that are used just for common utilities. So it's a fantastic message. If in the villa of a mafia boss, there's just a police station, just to send a message that what was private has become not public, but common good. Common good. And speaking about that, of course, I have to speak about the mafia, because being the mayor, I hope that one day you will invite me, asking me to speak only about music. But waiting for that day, let me speak about mafia. I think there's no city in the world, no city in Europe, sure, so culturally changed like Palermo in the last 40 years. I will avoid to speak about manifesto during my speech. I will not speak about manifesto.
People here want to hear about mafia. Don't worry.
No, I will not speak about manifesto, but I hope you will understand that behind what I say, there is always manifesto. There's just the spirit of manifesto. That is just the spirit of somebody thinking that it's possible that art plays an important civil role. In combination with the civil courage, in combination with sensibility for human rights, in combination of democratic values. So, I will not speak about manifesto, I speak about Palermo. And I will say that when I started my experience, Palermo was governed by the mafia. The mafia the face of the bishop, the mafia the face of chief of police, the mafia the face of prosecutor, the mafia the face of the mayor, of course. I cannot forget. And you can imagine, before me, the mayors of Palermo were normally friends of mafia boss. Normally, I must be honest, there was one, he was not friend of mafia boss. He was the mafia boss. In the same time, mayor of Palermo and mafia boss. I was considered atheist and communist since I was 14 years old, and I went in a Jesuit college. I was called the atheist communist. Nobody's perfect. I've never been atheist. I'm sorry, but nobody's perfect, and I've been communist. I'm sorry. But being against the mafia, the bishops, mafiosi, said that I was atheist. And being against the mafia, the minister, mafiosi, said I was opposition and communist. And there was at that time a justicialist. Because we were in war. We know what does mean to pass. Think to Pristina, please. Think to manifesta, please. We know what does mean to pass from the war to the peace. We know what does mean to pass from the war with the weapons of the mafia, the war with the law enforcement of the state. You can imagine in 1985, the first public building as mayor was to build the Aula Bunker, just a place to celebrate the Maxi trial against 400 mafiosi. So, Aula Bunker means war. War, bunker. The war of the mafia with weapons, the war of the state with the law, and I was considered a justicialist. Prison, prosecutor, considered atheist, communist, and crazy, of course. In 1992, there was something that changed just the life of my city. The mafia killed too much. And after the killing of Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino, both my friends, I celebrated the wedding of Giovanni with Francesca in the city hall in the night, in secret for security reasons. After the killing, they exaggerated. And there was the reaction of the people. At that time, I was not mayor. I was member of the National Parliament. And there was the reaction of people. And the Pope, Giovanni Paolo, clearly spoke against the mafia. Finally. And the mafia replied, killing a priest, a parish, a simple priest, a friend of mine, not against the mafia. It was a simple priest asking to recognize the right of the children in the periphery of the city to have a school. A mafia boss had more fear for a simple priest asking respect of the right to have a school than for the weapons of police. And they killed him. From that moment started the passage from the war to the peace, from the war of the law to the peace of the rights. And in November 1993, I was elected mayor with 75%. And the president of City Council was the leader of the anti-mafia pool of Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino, the Judge Caponet. From that moment, we have just said to the world, the mafia does not govern any longer the city of Palermo. And from that moment, we passed from the war to the peace, giving honorary citizenship of Palermo to the person condemned to death. The Justicialist Orlando, giving honorary citizenship of Palermo not only to Dalai Lama, you can imagine the position of the Chinese government, very happy when I gave the honorary citizenship of Palermo to Dalai Lama. Not only Dalai Lama, but even the persons condemned to death. A justicialist, just to send the message no one can kill, neither the state. Not asking if the justly condemned to death is a criminal. We are the only city in the world who has buried the condemned to death. He was condemned to death, Joseph Odelli, in Richmond, in Virginia. And before dying, he asked to me as the last desire to be buried in Palermo. And we buried in Palermo an American condemned to death in Virginia. Do you know the sense of the message? Just respect of the life. You probably don't know, we organize in Palermo the largest gay pride in South Europe.
But how did you survive? You said in 93, you
Yes.
came to power, they were somebody you needed to win over. What was your biggest challenge? 95 to 2022, the biggest
children
challenge.
and the women of Palermo. The children of the women of Palermo discovered that to be governed by the mafia was not convenient, not moral, legal, convenient. The young people at the last election, 2017, I got 82% of the votes of young people from 18 to 30 years. 82%. Only 20% of the parents. But 82 and 20 was enough to be re-elected. Because I send a message to the young people that they have to be in war against the parents.
But you didn't
Just
win.
to change their mind.
Okay,
It's
but
not convenient.
it
And
must-
this is the process of peace. Therefore, when you ask to me how many migrants are in Palermo, I do not reply 80,000, 90,000. Just with the Hava Charter of Palermo, approved in 2015, I reply we have no migrant in Palermo. Who is in Palermo is Palermitan. I make no distinction between who was born in Palermo, who does live in Palermo. Do you know what does mean in terms of security? Do you know what does mean to live in a place where you make no the mayor makes no distinctions? And we are a racist city, racist, because we defend the only existing race, the human race. And we are against the law of the blood. The identity does not come from the blood of the parents. I'm not Palermitan because my father and my mother were Palermitans. I am Palermitan because I decided to be Palermitan. At the end of this speech, I can decide to be Tunisian and Hindu. Oh no, better, German and Jewish. So one identity, one race, 7 billion of identities. May I just ask what it should mean in Pristina? If we're speaking about Serbia, Kosovo, we should say that we have only one race and 7 billion of identity not coming from the blood. Probably we should promote a process of peace. Best wishes.
Thank you. Fascinating story. I want to go to Femke Halsema. You have something that people from Pristina, when they close their eyes, they dream of water. that is what we envy cities of water. We have two cities in Pristina which have water. We have more than two, Prizren and Peja and other cities. But we envy capitals of the Balkans like we envy Amsterdam. Belgrade, Sarajevo, Skopje or Skup, they all have a river. And your life in Amsterdam goes around water, and you're so lucky actually to live. I retreat my word of that you're unlucky, that I said in the beginning. You're so lucky to live next to so much water. We dream of it because we live in such a dry, dusty place. Now, this is speaking like a tourist, and I bet we, the tourists, are your biggest challenge in reclaiming public space. How do you deal with the problems? You come from a Green Party, I understand, but what is your biggest challenge in reclaiming public spaces from people like myself, who are many more people than the inhabitants of Amsterdam who want to see Amsterdam? How do you save yourself from us?
Well, first, let me thank you for being here, and let me compliment Manifesta, because as you said, it's an Amsterdam organization, but it is an international organization that's vested in Amsterdam, and we're very proud that Manifesta is also in Amsterdam and active in Amsterdam. So that's the first thing I would like to add. And I hope you do know that we're 2 meters below sea level also. So more than 50% of our grounds is water, and we're 50%, and we're 2 meters below sea level. So we have a small problem there too, with the rising tides and with climate change. But if you ask me what are the threats for Amsterdam, I'd say there are 3. I'd say there's the London threat, there's the Venice threat, and there's the Palermo threat. And let me explain just a little bit. Amsterdam has been an affluent city for a very long time, and I think we've been very happy with it. It is, especially after Brexit, also a very popular city for expats. And it makes the city very rich, although only rich in the private atmosphere, because in the public atmosphere we're not a very rich city. Public finance of the city is not huge. But we see a lot of expats entering the city, and it makes the city very expensive, especially in the housing markets. So the middle classes in Amsterdam cannot live there anymore. We have 2 groups of people in Amsterdam who are prominent. First, you have the richest groups, and they are not mainly, but growing international expats, others, people with an international perspective on life who live in Amsterdam for some years and then move on. The middle classes go to the suburbs and go to other places, and those are our teachers, our police officers, and it creates a huge problem because it makes Amsterdam less livable than it has always been, and it's also not sustainable for the future of the city, because who is going to teach our children if the teachers cannot live there? So I would call this the London problem. It's our first problem. A city where the middle classes cannot live anymore. The second problem, it's not people like you. We love people like you. We love international, I think so. Well, I'm not sure, but I think you're not the kind who is coming to Amsterdam, visit a coffee shop, go to the pub, rent a beer bike, and then throw up in our canals.
I've got Pristina for that.
Yeah, I thought so. Well, you know, Amsterdam, as you said, has a long tradition in tolerance, in human rights. We're very proud of it. And it's also the city that's always associated with buying drugs freely, legalization of prostitution, and it's also something we're not ashamed about. No, I'm even proud of it, because prostitution, for instance, in Amsterdam is legalized, and it means that the human rights of prostitutes are protected in Amsterdam. So I'm very proud. But it has become commercialized over the last 20 years, and it has become a business model of a lot of touristic entrepreneurs in our city. And they've advertised with Amsterdam in Dublin, in Scotland, in London, and Amsterdam is a very, but I want to keep it a secret, it's a very cheap destination if you want to, if you want to take a European flight. It's one of the cheapest destinations to fly to. But please don't tell anyone.
Don't worry, you're in a country where people cannot get visas, they need visas to come.
I know.
So
oh, no. Oh, yes.
you can
yes,
speak
that's
out.
true. Oh,
Nobody
I'm so sorry, I forgot.
can come as a tourist.
Well, yes, so
You're
you
not
can
under
tell
risk.
all your friends. Well, so we are run over by tourists who come not to experience the atmosphere of tolerance, not our underground club culture, not our museums, but who just want to exploit our city. And they're not coming in small amounts. I talked to the mayor of Florence some weeks ago, and he was very worried because of the amount of tourists who come to Florence, namely 15 million a year. Well, to Amsterdam, we have 22 million visitors a year. And we're small, in land, we're a small city, and almost half of it is water. So, what are you going to do? And especially in our historical inner city, it's going to become a big problem. It's part of UNESCO heritage, and it's run down. And that's the first problem. And the second problem is that a lot of the people who live in Amsterdam become estranged from their own city. And they lose their emotional bonds with the city. And here it comes together with the first problem, the social segregation the city sees, is that the people who are very important to Amsterdam to survive and to be sustainable in the long run, they can leave our city. So I would say this is our Venice problem. And then thirdly, our Palermo problem. You probably know that last year a very famous journalist was shut down in Amsterdam. The year before, a very famous lawyer was shut down. Was shot. Sorry. The year before, a witness, and they were all shot by organized crime. The writer of Gomorrah, a great series, by the way, and a very great journalist. Well, he said about Amsterdam after the third murder, well, what's the difference with Italy? Because we have a problem that we are, unfortunately, we are crucial in the international cocaine trade. And it's because Amsterdam is open, it's international, it has always been good in trade, it has a very tolerant drug culture, and this all comes together and creates a very good atmosphere for international drug trade. And that's a problem. And it's becoming more and more violent, and it undermines our legal economy. I would say this is the Palermo problem we have. So we're at the beginning, and I have to learn from my colleague from Palermo what to do. From all your mistakes and how we're going to do it better.
I normally say that I have a tremendous experience. George Bernard Shaw said experience is the name we give to our mistakes. So I have a tremendous experience.
Yeah.
I did a lot of mistakes.
Well, and just to finish, because I would really love to hear from my colleague from Pristina, but just to round up, reclaiming public space is really necessary in a lot of ways, as finding a common ground for the people who live there, a public atmosphere, a public domain You would say it's a common good. I would say it's the public domain, where people can interact and find each other again. We also need a democratic atmosphere and a political atmosphere that stands firm against corruption, against crime, against violence. And it also needs to be a public space of the middle classes who do not have the resources to buy a cappuccino of €7, which it very often costs in Amsterdam. So we need to reclaim public space as an answer to the three threats I just named. That's it.
Thanks very much. Prparim, I would do this in Albanian usually with you. We would talk in Albanian because this is an international debate. We'll do this in English. People like yourselves, you are also, apart from just being mayor, you're architect. When we talked of architects in Pristina, historically we cannot forget that the guy who made first battle to claim public space after the war, Recep Ljuci, an architect, got shot. I was reminded by the story when I heard. People here got shot for wanting to stop illegal building from happening. And what happened after that, people got scared and illegal building boomed. This became a chaotic city, which many internationals, when they come, say, Pristina is beautiful, it's changed, it's developed. But we know that it's developed from mostly illegality. How challenging it is for you today to fight that. We are not at a stage, I believe, that people get shot, but nevertheless, what are you finding in this challenge to reclaim public space?
No, thank you very much. First and foremost, I'm delighted to be here with two fantastic mayors here with a lot of experience, and just listening to you, you know, I already feel better. You know, we're not as bad. And more confident that yes, we can make a change that the city needs. So I'm delighted, and I'm listening very closely. And Jeta, thank you very much for hosting this. Obviously, Manifesta for making all this happen. I think you know, I kind of break down things to these finite points, or if you transform you know, the need for something to happen. For example, you know, you have the private sector. You know, that has the wealth, that wants to invest, that wants to develop, that wants to grow. You need to sort of create structures, regulations to allow for that to happen. Because there is this force, you look at it as an energy, as a force, and you need to kind of structure it in a positive way so that it grows and it creates social value rather than issues. You know, so instead of looking at it as a negative aspect, you know, you look at it as a potential, as an opportunity. So you don't fight it, you work with it. You fight it by working with it, you know, by creating rules and regulations that then allow it to develop and grow for the benefit of the city, for the common good, you know, as the mayor mentioned. And I think that's the key. Largely the issues that we have today with the city of Pristina is because of the public sector being unable to sort of plan well in advance in order to create these processes for the private sector to invest, grow, and develop. And when you just say stop, you know, when you just say stop, no, you can't do this. If you abstract that, if you think about it as this energy force, obviously it's going to fight against you. But if you say, no, you can't do it here, but you can do it here and here and here because this is what the city needs, then you divert that and you let it emerge as a new outcome that is beneficial to the citizens. Because I think, again, we have to also look at the positives of our city. I mean, the great things about Pristina is that it is truly a vibrant city. It has a lot of potential, it has a lot of positive energy, a lot of creativity, and people by default, they see that yes, they can invest here. So for investors, especially for locals, they see it as a land of opportunity. And we need to then match that with public policies to transform it for the good of the people. And this is precisely what we're doing. You know, we have a master plan. We've stopped a previous sort of municipal development plan that was pushed forward, which we analyzed, and it was not creating social value. It was creating more square meters, but not value. And we are working on it to balance. You know, we have this umbrella that we're calling it a 7-minute city, which creates largely an umbrella of our strategy of providing within 7 minutes of where people live, creating opportunities for them in public realm. So providing schools, health centers, green spaces, ability to park if they want to drive, but also the opportunity to ride a scooter or bicycle or e-bike because of the topography here. You know, bicycles, you can't really ride them. Well, it's quite difficult. You do get quite fit, actually, if you do that. But people generally, you know, want to find...
very fast if you go downhill.
They want, precisely, but then uphill, you need to get a taxi or something. So if you think about the concept of you know, path of least resistance, you know, the moment you wake up and you want to go from home to work, or home to a park, or home to a school, and think about that experience. What is the unfolding scene that you experience every day you wake up? And are you a child? Are you a grandfather or grandmother? Are you a parent? And this is the idea of the 7-minute city, that we create opportunities for people, for residents within Pristina, that their experience is easy. It sort of provides these functions and program for them to you know, not to sort of feel like they're tired from the moment they get out, but they're filled with energy because they can, let's say, you know, if you're an elderly, you want to, you know, walk, and you want to be able to sit maybe because you can't walk more than 100 meters. So you want to have a place to sit. If you are a parent with a child and pushing a stroller, you want to feel secure while doing that, you know, not have these public spaces filled with cars, and that makes you feel, again, safe and secure. And the reason I mentioned over and over again the importance of people feeling secure is that the moment you feel secure, by default, you open up. You open up to others. You open up to interaction. You listen. You open up to your colleagues. You open up to nature. You know, you become a better human being because you're more confident about where you are in your everyday life. And that then you know, turns into this positive characteristic. And I think it is the importance of the city to provide these opportunities for everyone within our neighborhoods, you know, places where we live. So every little aspect matters, and these sort of little interventions create the complex feeling of good and positive, or the negative one of feeling kind of tired and worried. As you mentioned, yes, our city definitely has a lot of potholes, a lot of issues, a lot of, but you know, I would disagree that makes us better humans, that you know, makes us want to be better citizens. It is not. It does make us present nonetheless, because we fear we're going to fall, you know, somewhere. So we are present in space, which I guess being present is a positive. Nonetheless. So our strategy is largely to untangle the city, open it up, clean it up, because we did have a lot of interventions in public realm, in public spaces, a lot of illegal interventions, and we have shown, like in our now key areas, that we have opened that up, but we have not gone with this idea of where the power would tell you to get rid of them, you know, open them up. We invited them. Let's talk. Let's talk about our cities, and let's jointly show the potential of the city. So the gastronomy sector that has built these illegal aspects, we invited them, spoke to them, told them about our vision, about the future, and how that intervention would be to the benefit of themselves as well, not just the city. And 90% of them, they dismantled these illegal infrastructure or these constructions themselves. By only, you know, very few that we had to obviously intervene, and maybe it was lucky that the few that we had to intervene were the first ones, but we told them that we're not going back, that we're going forward. And so therefore we have them as part of the process. And I think this is the importance of bottom-up approach as well as top-down. So you take communities, you create possibilities to interact with communities, hear them, discuss with them. And we are undergoing series of meetings in various neighborhoods now, listening to them. What are their ideas? What are their issues? And then taking those as part of our top-down approach, the master plan, the municipal development plan, so that they do feel like they matter, their ideas matter, their issues matter, and they become part of development of the future of the city.
Having heard the mayors, we open the floor to questions. Please let me know who wants to pose a question. And in the meantime, we have the mic there. You can give the question, the mic here. And in the meantime, while the mic gets there, preparem one of the. I just want to ask you. I was inspired by Femke, who said we have 3: London, Venice, Palermo problem, and I would say Pristina has a Palermo problem, which is that Palermo is the most similar city in Europe I've seen being, let's say, having a garbage problem. Palermo's, as far as I read in the history, correct me if I'm wrong, has its links to mafia. It was run, the cleaning, public services were mixed up with mafia. Ours, we've talked about this, and you have fired recently the head of the cleaning company. One of the biggest problems in reclaiming public space in our city, one is the private money, people who have enough money and think they are entitled to public space. The second is simply normal people throwing garbage. And this is the broken window syndrome. The more garbage people see in the street, the more they will throw. Having done the first step in firing the person who was in charge of cleaning up our city, how do you think we will deal with the garbage problem, in that we don't have to wait for Manifesta to clean up? In 3 months, me and you are stuck here without Manifesta, me and you and many people here. Will we continue to clean up, or will we go back to our garbage, being to it like turtles in a hot water, that we don't see what is a problem because we don't have enough tourists here and nothing to show up for? So how do we create a culture of cleaning in our city?
Well, again, when you take your time to understand what the real issues are, then you see that there's hope, and there is hope for our city. Yes, we did fire the person in charge, and we found out that again all the investments were going to employ, like nepotism, illegal, employment. There was 900 people, only 137 working here in the municipality, really doing the work. 58 rubbish trucks, only 9, kind of operational. They were doing tenders, not buying new trucks, but they were buying old trucks because they could, steal by doing so. So we found out about a lot of informalities, and we stopped that. And yes, we do have a little bit of Palermo issue, because again, one of the persons, he did get attacked because we also stopped illegal use of petrol, for the private cars, and a series of other interventions that we've carried out to bring, this public company at the level that it can serve the city. So
do you get threats? Sorry, I didn't see you since you fired him. Did you get threats for doing that?
No. I don't get threats. No.
Okay.
No, I will not get threats.
Okay.
Not regard them as threats anyway.
Hetty Judah from The Economist. Thank you, Jeta, and everyone. I kind of have 2 questions. I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to limit myself. Just in general, I'd really love to hear from Jeta and Parparim a bit of actually the background to the privatization of public space in Pristina, because I think most of us in the audience here are visitors, and we hear this referred to a lot in the discussion around Manifesta. So it would be really interesting for us to have a bit of background information to what's gone on in the last 14 years in the city with the privatization of buildings. But I really also want to hear from Leo Luca about the legacy of Manifesta in Palermo, and what happened to the buildings that were renovated and opened up for Manifesta, whether they're still in the state they were when I visited 4 years ago, because it would be interesting to learn from this what we might be able to apply to the experience of Pristina. Thank you.
Yeah, with regards to the public space being privatized, maybe a little bit of background is that a lot of spaces, buildings during the former communist times, they were all state-owned, and then they were all owned by these organizations that were part of the central system, centralized sort of communist system in those times. And then obviously, during the process of transformation from one system to another, more socialist, you had this, series of buildings still under, various companies that were state-owned. After the war, this agency for privatization was formed to privatize, and through privatization process, it was thought that more jobs were created, the economy was stimulated, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, what happened with a lot of these privatization processes, they literally just got neglected, or they just got broken up and then sold on again for some other use that was probably very little to do with public good. And so there's quite a bit of history in that. Maybe this gives you just a brief description of what that is. But I can, we do have now, they call them privatization waves, which municipality has access first, and the government, central government, to all these buildings. And we've requested that we buy them all, because we can buy them for 20%, so the fraction of the actual cost, and the capital city needs them. We're in desperate need for these buildings, these spaces, to then use them, to utilize them, to reach our agenda of 7-minute city, where we create social value, and we create these green zones, public zones that are for the benefit of the common good.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you something. Is it also possible, if because that's an instrument we use very often, that in those buildings that are privately owned, through our agenda of urban planning, we accept that they're privately owned, but we create a public purpose and a societal purpose, so they can be bought privately, but only if they're used for schools, for... is it possible? Do you have those kind of instruments?
We are working on those instruments. I'm not aware that we do have them currently, but we're also working on how to manage or mitigate this explosive development growth of the city by providing these regulations that certain parts of the development we have access as municipality for, like social housing or affordable housing, or for creating nurseries or schools and so on. So it's more like a tax into these sort of developments that then allow us to use them for public good.
One more thing. Well, I think it would be really nice to work together, because Amsterdam has a very long tradition in urban planning, and I think that's one of the reasons that privatization of public space has long been not such a threat. Now it's become a new threat, but it is because of the regulation we have had in the past. And I think, well, maybe we can help in some form or another.
I think you can definitely help us a lot, and I briefly mentioned it earlier as well, because you have lack of buildings and we have too much. We could also bring our developers to Amsterdam and help you with the private sector.
Yeah, that would be great too.
Just to speak about Manifesta. At least I speak even about Manifesta. But I don't want to appear naive. But when I hear speaking about public and private, I do not understand. Please, don't consider me naive. I'm totally alternate to be naive. But I think that we need to be free from the fear. We need to be free from the fear of the public, free from the fear of private. There's all from private.
Oh, from the private sector, yes.
Both, both. There's only one way, I say another time, is to promote the common goods. The pieces of art in Grand Hotel are public or private? I don't know. They are considered common goods. A school is public or private? A pedestrian area is public or private? An opera house is public or private? You know that if we just change our mind and we consider it not relevant to be public or to private, but relevant to be common goods, probably we can be free from fear. I know that behind what I say
Is a world of
yes,
complexity.
it's the jungle.
Yes, it's
Okay?
the jungle.
jungle.
Yes,
Okay,
that's true.
okay. But I think that a mayor has to send a positive message.
Yes,
Has to say
I
that it's
agree.
possible through the civil control, through the citizenship, just to avoid the exaggerations of public and of private. So I think that the city is just the. Therefore, I think that Manifesta played sure a role in a city like Palermo that was just on the path, just on the way, not to promote marketing, but to promote a regenerative marketing. It means not to say how nice is territory of Palermo, then buy the oranges. That is exactly the philosophy of marketing. How fantastic is territory of Palermo? How fantastic is the dome or cathedral in Palermo? Please, buy orange saft coming from Palermo. No, what I'm just doing since 2 years with Professor Kotler, Philip Kotler, the inventor of marketing, just to try to transform the marketing into regenerative marketing. I do not promote the beauty of territory. I change the territory to promote the beauty of the city. So the green corridor is a tremendous positive value because sends a message. The green corridor is public or private? Oh, I don't know. I don't care. I don't care. It's not the problem. It's not the problem. The problem will be used like private, like public, or will be not used?
I think, Mayor, if I can engage with that, I think that's why it's the feeling of ownership, and what makes the
Sense of
citizen-
community.
sense of community. So part of the process, and this is the very idea that I mentioned earlier, that it is important to engage community, and that's why I think Green Corridor is fabulous, and every other installation, they're brilliant because they are part of this community engagement. And then when the community engages, they feel sense of ownership. When they feel sense of ownership, that's where you're shifting into this grounds of where public and private disappears and becomes common good. Yeah.
Somebody told me, a citizen of here in Pristina told me, Professor, let's control if the mayor will just extend the green corridor for another kilometer. You know, it's cultural change. It's cultural change.
Any other questions? Anybody wants to pose a question over there? Thank you.
I guess for most of our cities, the biggest real collective threat over the next 50 years is probably climate change. And our cities, the centres of European cities, are so heavily privatised. The cost of saving those cities from climate change will be borne entirely by the public sector, by public money, by our tax money. How do you think municipalities should make sure that the benefits of that public expenditure are equally shared when, if the centre of the city is private, so much of that benefit, if we leave things as they are now, will just be taken by the private sector.
And your name?
Edwin, I'm an artist from London.
Thank you. Great question. Thank you very much. I think, Mr. Femke, you should take this because one of the challenges that you mentioned is the climate change. Actually, this question comes from your concern that there is a lot of money in this city, but it's not public. Public is thriving, is not a rich city, you said. So
no, publicly not.
So
well,
how do you make
still,
the private
well,
sector pay for global change interventions? That
let me start by saying that I'm very much aware that in comparison to the challenges you face, Amsterdam is still a very privileged city with a very high quality of life. It has threats for the future. It can deteriorate, but it is still a very affluent and I think privileged city. But in answer to your question, well, to you, the private sector only poses a threat to climate change, and I think working together with the private sector, especially in Amsterdam, works very well, because we share the same goals in maintaining Amsterdam livable. We do have to create public norms where they have to abide by. So I don't know if I'm going in the direction of your question. No, I'm not.
I'm not talking about the private sector causing climate change, the public sector does as well.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that the cost of, so I spend a lot of time in Amsterdam. I've talked to lots of young people who live in the middle of Amsterdam. None of them think Amsterdam will exist in 50 years. Now, the cost of rescuing a city like Amsterdam, it's just true, like they all, when they look at it.
Is it really a thorough research you did? Because then I'm getting very worried.
I talked to it's just their perception, you know, young people, they know their city is 2 meters underwater. Yeah. They know that oceans will rise by another 1.5 meters, and there's only so high you can build a dam. So the public sector, if the center of Amsterdam is to be saved, it will be saved by the public purse. Yet if most of the land in the center is privately owned, that benefit will be privately reaped. So what I'm asking is, how do you make sure that we collectively benefit from that act?
Well, then I need to explain something that is very local and very difficult to explain. In Amsterdam, a lot of the buildings are privately owned, but the grounds, and I was thinking about what you could do, or maybe should do, the ground is publicly owned. And if you want to buy a house or you want to buy a building, you also have to pay yearly rents on the grounds. And it means that Amsterdam is still in charge of its its grounds. We've lost a lot. There have been local governments in the past 30 years who gave away a lot, and there are also disadvantages to the system, but it creates a possibility to have urban planning and to rearrange the social groups in your city. So I think we still have an instrument to counter climate change. That's an answer you were looking for. All right. Okay.
But is Pristina thinking of countering climate change in any way?
Yes, absolutely.
Considering it heats itself with coal?
No, well, again, unfortunately, we still do heat ourselves with coal, and under current geopolitical conditions, I think we're lucky that we have it. Because the world has changed last year, with Russia occupying Ukraine, and again with various energy issues. So on one aspect, we have that, so we can still heat ourselves. On another, yes, we are definitely have an agenda. The whole agenda is actually largely a green agenda, kind of combining with Euro Vision 2030 in terms of climate change rules and regulations that we have proposed, and the city itself. How we connect, the city center with the neighborhoods by pushing forward the agenda of, pedestrians and alternative means of movement like e-scooters and bikes, and also public transport, but also working with sewage water, with like separating sewage and natural water, also changing, redefining the city center by changing the actual material, fabric, so getting rid of asphalt and then creating more porous materials so that you don't sort of, overcharge the sewage system with flows, and so you have these more porous systems around within the city, within the urban zones. And also we have, again, kind of knowing or analyzing where the water is coming, how it's collecting, how it's actually attacking the city, because we do get 2-3 major floods in the city at the moment as a result of I guess overdevelopment and underdevelopment with our sewage system. Again, I mean, tree planting and all that, obviously that's part of the agenda, but just this sort of transformation of the mobility, the way we move around city, the way we treat the environment, so the material palette, and again, decreasing the temperature levels in our urban realm, connecting the urban to the rural zones by providing new opportunities to engage with nature via bicycle routes, via sort of opportunities in our rural zones, where we now have imposed, as part of the process of municipal development plan, materials that are based on circular economy, so you can recycle. So no use of concrete, but use of wood and recycling materials, to then also develop these little villages to a point that they do make sense for public transportation, for buses to get there, so that from financial point of view, it makes sense. So with this whole sort of ecology of interventions that we are now placing as part of municipal development plan to help us with a strategy to mitigate with future issues in terms of global climate change.
Just only to say that, of course, speaking about public and private in this case, sometimes it can be useful just. Normally the public has a limited role about law and education, because climate change mainly depends from the private interest. But of course the public can give a contribution, even a contribution helping to change the mind of the people. So, for instance, in Palermo, we inaugurated the 4 tram lines. We have a projected money for the 7 lines of tram. It means in 2030, we will have 11 tram lines in Palermo for 86 millions of tickets every year. We have car sharing, bike sharing, taxi sharing. We are not Amsterdam, but we have thousands and thousands of bikes, bicycles, so many. Yeah. And I invited even some experts from your city just to say us how it's possible just to promote. We, of course, promoted the pedestrian areas. We promoted just a sustainable mobility that is really, really important. But what is important is just to let the persons, the financial group, the international financial group, to change their mind. Yeah. Because otherwise, our engagement will produce probably more insufferance than really defend from the consequence of climate change. So I think that what is important is the international community of states. They have to oblige the financial international system to invest in name of the principle, coming from the danger, because I want to be free from the fear of climate change. To be free from the fear of climate change, I need to take care of climate change.
Yes, and then last question there.
Well, let me just add one thing. In the end, I think the fighting climate change is a national and international strive. And I think one of the most important things is changing our tax system. Because, for instance, in Holland, and I think probably also here, we tax labor and we do not tax pollution. And that should change. I think that is one of the, because it has a very, it has a big influence on the economic system, on which companies are going to invest in your cities, but you can also do it on a local scale. Not as big as you can do it on a national scale, but for instance, you can do it with garbage. Price the garbage, tell the companies that they should pay for it, and give them something in return where they should not pay for. So there a system arises where the behavior you do not want, you price, and the behavior you do want, if it's private or public, it doesn't matter, you subsidize or you honor.
Talking about climate change, I can feel the heat in this room. No air conditioning, so that's why I think this should be the last question.
Thank you very much. My name is Judith, and yeah, my question is maybe connected to water and nature. I saw a lot of stray dogs on public spaces, and I saw how Manifesto acknowledged the problem, like putting them on as a symbol of the city on the posters, and also like merch and the book of the exhibitions. And I want to know, like, how do you engage with the dogs in Kosovo through this like 100 days of Manifesto? Because for me it was really heartbreaking to go around the city and not even see like one bucket of water for them. So I'm curious about what do you do like in this coming ways?
Yeah, thanks for that. That's actually a noble point. I think we should definitely have points of where we have water, for stray dogs. Stray dogs, unfortunately, have been quite a huge issue for years in Kosovo, and they remain a huge issue to a point where we do have kind of a citizen backlash. We are largely trying to comply with European laws in how we treat dogs. However, we have not got financial means to deal, with European laws at the moment, to deal with the issue, and so the issue is becoming, quite concerning, because a lot of citizens are kind of starting to take matters in their own hands, and that is then again, a massive problem. Municipality of Pristina has, we've taken a lead role now for the past 6 months in trying to deal with the situation by creating also a lot of houses for, like a location to house stray dogs for a period of time while they get castrated, sterilized, and then we have made several proposals to then put them for adoption, and also proposals to then subsidize families that would, take stray dogs home. Because at the moment we also need laws from the central government which are not yet passed in how we deal with the issue. And also, as you know, stray dogs, it's an organic kind of issue. You can't, you take a pack of dogs and then another pack comes, and if you then, according to the laws, we have to release them back, but when you release them back, they become, I think, more violent against one another, and then the citizens as well. So we do have a huge issue that we are tackling, we're trying to tackle, and again, it needs kind of a national approach, but also I think we need to also reflect and see what is doable? What can we do as a country under the conditions that we're at, in the place where we're at, because it's again, dogs know no borders, and there are issues in other neighboring countries similarly, with like North Macedonia, Serbia, Montenegro, Albania, that have the same issue. So it is a very complex topic, but in terms of feeding them or giving them water, thanks, we will actually have to do that immediately.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
thinking about
Yes.
like 25 locations, like Manifesta
Yeah,
can,
because we do have 23 locations we feed them. We feed dogs. There's 23 locations, and in those 23 locations there is water as well, but we should have water in more areas, and maybe all the gastronomy kind of outdoor spaces or.
I will take another question behind you. Please pass on the mic.
Hi, yeah, my name's Alma, and I'm working at the brick factory with Ram Labor as one of the students. I wanted to turn back to Manifesta. I think the question that for Leo Luca about what's happened since Manifesta,
Good question.
I would love to hear the answer to that question, and then turn it to Perparim and what you see, hope for the future, what your plans are. When you spoke to us, you were telling us about how much power you have, and I was wondering if you're thinking of giving other people power to use those spaces and not just maybe decide yourself what's going to happen with them.
Excellent questions. Please don't tell us miracles happened after Manifesta.
I think that it was a fantastic, what can I say, harmony between the vision of Manifesta and the moment the city of Palermo was living. The city of Palermo was living a moment of liberation from the government of the mafia, just a movement just to promote peace of human rights. And that year we were the Italian capital of the culture. So 2018, it was a very, very important combination. We were Italian capital of culture, and we hosted Manifesta too. So it was really a tremendous contribution to let Palermo connect roots and wings. Because the risk that we live is just to die inside our roots, or the risk that we can live just to fly without roots. And so we combined the roots and wings, and it means many investors coming in Palermo, just buying, investing. I only wish to tell you that Manifesta participated to a path that was just on the way, because I had to say that Manifesta understood that it was the right place where to go, but we were just on the way. You can imagine, the airport of Palermo was an airport where landed the drug and dollars of the mafia, and some journalists to make some interview about the mafia, nothing else. Now the airport of Palermo is named Falcone and Borsellino, just the name of the judge killed by the mafia. We host millions and millions and millions of tourists every year, and not to be guarded from the mafia is convenient. It's convenient. By the breakfast, hotel, taxi driver, touristic guide. Speaking about Manifesta, concretely, just you can say just in combination with that, with just Massimo Valsecchi who bought Palazzo Butera, I think that in this moment Palermo is the city having the most important private museum in Italy, but common goods, because the owner is exactly in synchrony with my vision. So for me it was not private, it was common goods, sharing just the vision of the city, the possibility for the city to be born another time. But speaking concretely about the money, okay, Manifesta in Palermo costed 6,800,000, something like that.
For the city?
No, it cost for the city something like 3.5 million.
Okay.
The rest came from tickets, from donors. So it means 50% from the city, something like that, and 50% from tickets from donors. But the economic impact was exactly 5 times more. It means something like 30 millions of economic impact, but I speak about the direct impact of the year. But if we consider the indirect impact along the years, we are something like 50 millions of euro. So may I tell you, my dear friend, it's convenient. I don't know if it is moral, ethic, legal. It's convenient.
Okay. Perparin, before you answer, very last question, then you answer them both. Yes. Quickly,
Yes.
shortly.
Thank you. My name is Katerina Gregos. I come from Athens, and I'd like to talk about the elephant in the room.
Yes.
And that is property development and gentrification. And cities that have been in crisis, and I speak about Athens, Palermo and Pristina are both prime candidates, are very, very attractive to property developers. Now, we in Athens experienced a crisis of 10 years. The property market crashed completely. And in the middle of the crisis, you could buy an apartment in central Athens for 20, 30, or 40,000 euros. And the property developers from all over the world moved in and bought up entire neighborhoods of the city, pushed out the local population, and gentrification started happening. So my question is, how do you avoid that? Because that actually means your city no longer belongs to you.
What we call the London problem in this panel. The London problem. Could you answer them both, Perparin, but don't forget, what after Manifesta? That was the question before.
No, that was what after Manifesta, precisely, and also the power of the mayor. I think, because it's like a presidential election, you're chosen by the people, that rightly gives you a lot of power, but at the same time, with power comes a lot of responsibility, and that's precisely the idea, that you use that power for the benefit of the people. The agendas that we have described and are now pushing forward to implement are for the benefit of the people, so to transform the city, to create that social value. And again, because I have been deputy chair of Manifesta, and we discussed the aspects of how Manifesta can help the city, and they largely, combined and merged in the vision of transforming the city. The legacies of Manifesta are clear and evident even from now. The power that that you have experienced and Jeta has experienced of being the mayor is the ability to send 100 trucks to go and clean the site because we have Manifesta coming. Yeah. So that's the power.
They wouldn't listen otherwise, would they?
No, they wouldn't.
They wouldn't.
So
there.
We need a deadline.
There. So
as
keep
well.
coming every 2 years. Just pretend you're doing Manifesta, okay?
We have to invent Manifestas, yeah. But the legacy again. I mean, with our industrial heritage, architectural heritage, urban heritage, there, the legacy is already in the making. Again, with help of your team, Ram Labor, the students, the co-creation of these spaces, the discussion about how these places can shift and change to help the community, to help the citizens. That's already happening, and you're experiencing it yourself there as a student. And this is now, we're in discussion with gastronomy community, with the artistic community, with the ICT sector, for co-working spaces. So we are creating this sort of ecology of various industries that will come within this space and transform the city, or transform the feeling of that space, which then becomes the ripple effect of the city redevelopment.
Now to reform the question that was asked about Athens, I know that our city is not facing quite the property development, people coming to buy like Amsterdam and London, but what we're facing is something similar. Diaspora buys in Pristina, we have 0.5 to 1 million people living abroad, Kosovars who have left in the last decades, and we have 30% of flats. One of the research said 30% of flats that are empty because diaspora buys. But at the same time, diaspora has fed the building of the city. Diaspora brings 700 millions a year to Kosovo and keeps this economy going. How do you see this? And where are the people who are buying new development, considering that you and me know that we have people leaving Kosovo? We suffer the coming down of natality. We suffer people wanting to leave. They will continue to leave. We know this by the data of people who register for school. There are less people, not more, every year. But yet we see more and more money and building going to apartment blocks. Where are the new Pristinadis coming from to buy these places?
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge issue, and this is what we've seen with previous sort of proposal for municipal development plan or previous regulating plans. We have 14 million square meters at the moment existing built fabric in Pristina. Based on previous regulating plans, we've kind of planned for 54 million. You know, so we have regulations that allow 54 million. That is 1.2 million, a city of 1.2 million. By 2030, we think there will be from now 320, 350,000 to probably 400,000. So we really need probably another 4 million. And the reason, I think there are many reasons why the building boom and why diaspora can so freely buy and leave. Because again, we have really no taxing. We're not taxing them properly. So I think we need to use instruments, you know, that they get taxed, and you know, because we still have complaints from people. I own a property. I'm being asked to pay for rubbish, and I don't live there. I'm like, well, you got to pay. you have it, you know. Whether I don't know when you're going to use it or you're not going to use it or who's going to use it and so on and so forth. So I think we need you know, instruments like taxation instruments in place in order to help us. What happened, you know, we don't want another, you know, Detroit, for example. I mean, that's kind of an example where the whole city collapsed, and then because again, they had taxation laws where you owned a building that now was worth $10. You could buy houses for $10, but you had to pay $25,000 a year in tax. So obviously you would sell it for 10 because you would just want to get rid of it, just give it to someone. And we obviously need to learn from other cities and their failures, or other ones that have actually managed it well and properly, and create that sort of infrastructure that does not allow for maybe another Athens or Detroit to happen here. At the moment, we do have 15,000 units which are not sold. You know, so we were going towards that trajectory, and we have stopped it and trying to, again, educate developers. That's why I think Amsterdam can help, because we can say, you can go over there.
Okay. Femke, I know you want to say something to this, but I also want to bring you down precisely to the last question for you and Orlando, Mr. Orlando, which is, how can you, Northern and Southern experience, continue to somehow exchange ideas and help Pristina beyond this presence here today? Can we see any other cooperation between your cities and Pristina?
All right, let me first, if you don't mind, give a short answer, because I think that's also part of the solutions we were too late in seeing gentrification happening in our city. So it is difficult to turn it around, but I think we have some instruments that really help. It is forbidden to speculate on new buildings you just bought. You cannot buy a building just to rent it out. We've made regulations for that. You cannot buy a building and leave it empty for too long a period. So we've made regulations that are not nice for speculants, and it helps against gentrification. And the second thing is we've had a tradition of social housing programs. And it not only means that every corporation that wants to build has to follow the rule of 40% social housing, 40% middle class, 20% highest class for rent. So that gives some very strict signal. But also, if you look at the areas in the city, for instance, in the north of Amsterdam, it's a huge building area, and we really need your buildings. But in the area, it's also planned that it also not only every plot needs to consist of 40-40-20, but also in the area, it is regulated that there needs to be houses for the highest incomes, houses for the middle incomes, and houses for the lowest incomes. And now we've introduced an extra instrument, and it says if people need a house, Amsterdam youth has a right to buy before others. And especially in the neighborhood where they grew up. So that's also a measure against gentrification. Well, we just invented it, so I'm not sure if it's going to work out well. But I think, and yes, I think it's really good to work together because we have threats for the future. I think you have a bright future in front of you, but you need to tackle some problems. And I think we can really help with we have a huge bureaucracy, and it's working more or less, but a lot of specialists, especially on urban planning. Well, am I exaggerating? Well, it's also a problem, and I think it would be very good if we could help. So I'd love to. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Leoluca, what can you do for Pristina now that you're unemployed, right?
I think that
Yes.
Pristina does not need my help.
You have to move
I think
here,
what is
Mayor
important is to exchange experiences. And just speaking about Amsterdam, just in Amsterdam 10 years ago, with a fantastic mayor van der Laan, we will never forget him, we launched the Global Parliament of Mayors. And I hope that Pristina will join the Global Parliament of Mayors. We are 100 mayors all over the world, and just our birthplace was Amsterdam,
Well,
and our general secretary is in Den Haag.
It's in the Hague.
Just yes. So you can understand that we are strongly connected with your country.
I know.
And I think it's important because we just share a vision, share practices, we exchange experiences, and we mayors, when we speak from all over the world, we feel less alone because we share the same problems. But the second thing that I wish to say is, and I am sure that the mayor of Amsterdam will hear what I'm saying in the correct way. I think that each city has to have his identity. And Palermo is not a European city. I'm sorry for Amsterdam. I'm sorry for Frankfurt. I'm sorry for Hamburg. We are a Mediterranean city. We're not European. And we are proud to be Mediterranean.
Yes,
and we can play a role until when we are Mediterranean. Of course, for me, European Union is the best revolution in the history of humanity. So I will defend, in any case, the European Union. But we are not European in the sense of Frankfurt or Amsterdam. Because we are what we call, I speak with an architect, so I have nothing to tell you. We are not a city-city, just like in Middle Europe. We are city country. It means that we do not know what is the traditional location. In the same part of the city, in Palermo, live the rich and the poor. They go in the same shop. They buy in the same shop. They walk in the same street. So, it is different. You have to decide. Do you want to be an European city in the sense that when I tell you where I live, you know how much do I get, what is my budget, or do you prefer to live in a city where, when you ask where you live, and I reply via Makeda, I can be the poorest of the richest of the city? I think the second is the best
that's a
city.
rhetorical question.
It's just a city country. It's just city country because in the country, just like in the historic center of Palermo that we restored, but I'm really afraid because I try to avoid that it's restored only for the rich. So when some part of the city becomes a location for the rich, I arrive with some social housing, so to let the people live together. I know, because we are Mediterranean, we are not Middle Europe city. So you have to decide.
No, I think we're kind of. I lived in London for 29 years, and they have a thing called
It's the kingdom of location.
Section 106, which is part of the regulation where it allows for affordable housing, and it's not about kind of creating these ghettos of maybe social housing, but it's about fusing various communities within the same environment. So that's what we're doing, and we are a Balkan city. We're not a European, not a Mediterranean. We're Balkans.
Okay, fine.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much.
So
Yes.
no one has to teach something to the others. No one has to teach something to the others. Everyone has to choose his way. Thanks.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to host such normal mayors. I think this is what most audience in Kosovo expect. You would have been people without problems. Today you have disappointed us. You have told us your cities have problems. We thought we were the only ones with problems. If Amsterdam thinks itself as a fading city and looks to Pristina as the upcoming city, wow. It just depends. The grass is greener always in the other side. It's amazing for us in Pristina to do a fact check with you. Thank you for your simplicity and common sense. You have brought to us a lot of practical things you have told us today, and common sense that we will take with us. Continue your trips in our city. Enjoy Pristina, you and the rest of international press who is there, and hope to see you in the opening tonight in Manifesta, which starts in 45 minutes.